Good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us. And we're continuing with a series of interviews with candidates running in contested races, local candidates in contested races. And we're going to focus for the next half hour on the race for Franklin County Probate Court Judge. With us, the two candidates, Probate Court Judge Vaughn Como, Berkshire Democrat, and St. Albans City Republican Bob Farrar. And I guess we're talking a rematch, gentlemen.
Yes.
I think we were here probably about four years ago.
We were.
And that was certainly an interesting and close race. Just for a slight bit of background, Bob, you actually, nothing I have to tell you guys, you won the Democratic primary 4 years ago. Vaughn got enough Republican write-in votes to get the Republican nomination, so I went to November, and Vaughn obviously won the race, but a pretty close race in November, as I recall. So we have an official rematch here. Bob, you ran as a Democrat 4 years ago. You're running as a Republican now. Why a switch in parties?
Well, I switched parties, so to speak, because I felt very aligned with many of the individuals in the Republican Party in this county. I've known them, Corey Parent and Joe Luno and Randy Brock and Bob Norris. I felt very aligned with them. And I also felt that that was just the way to go. I think even when I ran last time, I got along very well with those people. And locally, I feel they're on the right track. Although the probate court judge doesn't get involved in politics once he is elected, I still feel very aligned with the local Republicans. And so that's why I chose to do that this time.
And of course, between the 4 years, you won a race for St. Albans City Council. You're now a St. Albans City Councilor.
Yeah, I thought it was very important to, that's nonpartisan, as you probably know. There's no Republican or Democrat in the St. Albans City Council, but yeah, I did run and beat someone else for that position. It was a contested race also. I'm very happy and proud to be on the council. We're accomplishing quite a lot in the city. City's taking great strides on various issues. You're probably aware of most of them. That's not what we're here to talk about, but I'm happy to be on the city council also.
Right. And well, I've got you give us just a little background on yourself.
My background is that I was served in the United States Army for 2 years. I'm very proud of that. I then went to law school, and after law school, I moved to Vermont with my wife, Susan, who passed away just at the time of the last election. It was very tragic. And in fact, she was taken to Boston just before the election. And I have two children, two adult children that both live right here in Franklin County. My daughter is a teacher at St. Albans Town School, and my son works at Handy Toyota. He has one son. And so we've got tremendous local roots. I'm sure I'll always live here because they're here. And I have my law practice. We're operating out of my home, and as you mentioned, I'm on the city council. I also have many other involvements over the years, and just have always practiced law right here in Franklin County with an emphasis on trial practice, working with people, and I've done hundreds of probate cases over the years. I'm totally familiar with the new systems that have gone into place in the court system, and which I use every day, the Odyssey and the public portal. And I pride myself on being, a lot of people have asked me to run for this position. They felt I was trustworthy and would help to take care of some of the issues that have developed over the past 4 years. And I'm proud to do that, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the campaign.
Vaughn, again, going for easy decision to run for re-election or not so easy? Coming off again, having won 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was a fairly easy decision. Franklin County deserves a probate judge and deserves and expects a probate judge that's dedicated and experienced in probate law. And no other qualified candidates wanted to run as they didn't last time. And
it's an official part-time position, is it not, or is it not? Is that not official?
Well,
what you make of it?
The pay is a part-time position,
okay.
So they pay you for a part-time job.
The pay is part-time.
You're paid to do the job, so it's whatever it takes to do the job, and that's what I've dedicated myself to. I dedicated myself to that last campaign, and I've done that over the last 4 years, 3.5 years. It's really been a revolution in the probate practice the last 3.5 years. And I think we've done very well with accommodating the changes in the probate law, the substantial substantial revision in 2017. We had the new court system that was introduced, the IT system, which we got into, and then with COVID, we had a 3-month shutdown, hard shutdown, and had to deal with all the backlog and the IT aspects of having virtual hearings for the last 2 years.
And give us some background on yourself, beyond being a probate court judge.
Yeah, I grew up in Swanton, left and went to college, traveled the world and managed various international operations, then decided to go to law school as a second career. When 2011, I heard there was an opportunity to come back to Enosburg and take over a law practice there that needed a new lawyer. And so
Would have been Doug DeVries's practice, or
well, it was Doug, and then Ned Spear and Don Pellman took it over for about a year and a half, trying to manage it. But
Ned Spear still being probate court judge in Grand Isle County?
correct.
Okay.
Yep. And so I took over that practice and practiced there from 2000 since 2012. Still have that practice, and live in Berkshire with my wife and my daughter, and my family's all back in Vermont. Well, actually, my sister just left Vermont again, but multi-generational roots in the North Country, Northern New York and Vermont. So.
Bob, you've understandably pointed to the importance of experience with the job of probate court judge.
Yes.
I guess the question is, how do you beat Vaughn's experience having been the actual judge for 3.5 years?
People have asked me to run for this position because several people have come up to me and said, I had an estate with my mom and it just took forever and I wasn't very happy with that. And other people have had problems, as they reported to me, with some guardianship cases that weren't handled in a very satisfactory way, they stated. And so that's one reason I'm running. The other reason is I feel, as previous probate judges in this county have been, and I'm thinking of John Webster and Bob Cronin and even Larry Bruce, they had a law practice when they were elected, but they gave up those law practices and became full-time. I believe they felt the position required their full-time attention. And that's what I would intend to do also, is to become the full-time judge. I would not have a law practice. I think the people of Franklin County deserve that. The county is growing, and there's a lot of cases. I don't think there's as many as Vaughn has stated in some of his analysis, but there are a lot of cases, and they deserve a full-time judge. And I have the experience in terms of overall experience and probate. And so any systems that are there, I'm aware of them, I know them, and I believe I can do the job very, very well. And I think I can do it, frankly, I think I can do it better than the incumbent, and that's why I'm running.
Vaughn, again, you've got your private practice, which you intend to keep. Can you react to that? I assume, do you feel your private practice interferes with your probate court judge job at all?
It absolutely does not. My private practice, my employees, I employ 4 different people to take care of my day-to-day business in the private practice. I've dedicated myself since I ran in 2018 to make the probate court my priority. As we discussed earlier, that it's paid a part-time position, but the judiciary and the citizens expect you to do the job that needs to be done, no matter what the hours. I don't keep track of my hours. I do what needs to be done to take care of those things in a timely manner. And like last Friday, I was on vacation from my office, and I got a call midday from the probate court with an emergency, and I spent the afternoon dealing with that. That's what I do, and I've dedicated myself to that. So there's no problem with my probate practice and my private practice at all. The other judges chose to retire. They were late in their careers, and that was their choice. But it shouldn't take anybody with the volume of cases that we have full-time to manage those cases appropriately. And I believe over the last 3.5 years, I've done that as well as can be expected, especially given the 2.5 years of COVID that just destroyed the court system. And we managed very well with my team. Everybody's dedicated to it. So
obviously, your colleagues around the state, other probate court judges, or do some of those judges have private practices also?
It's changed. There used to be 9 out of the 14 had a private practice. I think it's probably 6 now.
Yeah.
Various candidates running to replace a couple of incumbents that are retiring. So I'm not sure whether they're going to keep their practice or not, but generally the majority of probate judges have kept their private practice.
Bob made a reference to some cases that took too long, whatever. Any reaction to comments Bob made?
I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
You know, we do our job the best we can. Like I said, we had a hard 3-month shutdown with COVID where we couldn't have any hearings. That created an extraordinary backlog. Just for instance, this month I had 21 new estates. So if you have 21 new estates that are filed and you need to have hearings on those, then you're shut down for months. You know, that's 60 cases that don't get heard on top of the another 21 that are coming in all the time. So we had to deal with that backlog. The civil division, the criminal division, everybody's dealing with their backlogs, but I think we managed it as best we could with remote hearings when we were authorized to do that.
Have you caught up with that? Has that backlog been dealt with at this point? Are you still kind of catching up?
I think so. We've got, you know, I was working on cases today that were estates that have been filed in September, and those have all been issued if they're ready to be issued. So we're, you know, I think there's some stuff pending, but it's usually because the files aren't ready to be finished. Things trickle in and they're not completely filed.
Bob, you mentioned you would see yourself as being the full-time probate court judge. Any changes? I realize you're not the judge now, but in terms of how the probate court judge, you know, deals with the court situation, anything different you do, or is that hard?
I think that's hard to say. I'm sure I'll have changes. You know, everyone that comes in does certain changes. I would be there perhaps more frequently than Vaughn, because he does have, despite what he says, I'm sure he tries as hard as he can, but he has two issues to deal with at all times, meaning being a probate court judge and managing. If he has 4 competent people in his office, and I know a couple of them, they are competent, but you still have to have oversight by the attorney and attorney representation in various matters. So Vaughn does have a conflict of time, if not of interest, and so I feel I would be more on the spot. I'm not saying anything that where Vaughn. I live right in St. Albans, so I'm half a mile from the courthouse, and I would be there much more frequently than Vaughn is able to be there, and so I would be able to be more hands-on kind of judge, and I feel that I have the capability and the expertise to do that.
You don't see that? Any reaction to Bob's comment there, Vaughn?
No, I mean, I have the state laptop with the new computer system, and especially with the remote hearings, my court laptop is on my desk at my office all day, every day, watching the emails and working on that. The court staff knows to call me when anything urgent comes up, and I drop everything in my private practice to deal with that. If I can deal with it remotely, I can deal with it remotely, but if I have to go in, last week I had to run into court on a day when I wasn't scheduled to be there, and we dealt with it, and I ran back to my private practice after it was dealt with because it needed to be dealt with in person. So no, we don't have any issues, and my staff in the office knows that everything stops when I have court business to do. So I work remotely, I work in person when I need to work in person. We're still fully remote in the probate court until we have
really? So no in-court hearings still?
We've had 2 in the last month, and in the big courtroom. They're working on the HVAC system in the county courthouse right now, and once we get the go-ahead, then we can have people in the probate courtroom, but I've had to go to the civil division courtroom to have two name changes, but those were celebrations, so we wanted to have everybody there and make it a special occasion, so they wanted to be in person. But those are the only 2 we've had basically in the last 2.5 years.
I should know we're taping this show on Wednesday, October 5th. Hopefully everybody has ballots now, voting between now
They are voting.
and November 8th. I'm sure some folks have probably already voted. Actually, I interviewed yesterday, October 4th, the side judge, Assistant Judge Kelly Goslin, and the 2 other candidates, Jay Sweeney and Josh Aldrich, for Assistant Judge. And Kelly especially talked about the work going on at the Superior Court. How's that work going? Once that work's completed, will you at that point get back to some in-court hearings? Or
Yeah, so we can have them in the large courtroom right now with limited capacity. They have to leave the windows open, and it's not really convenient in the winter. But nothing in the probate courtroom. I expect it'll be done sometime in November, and then the state judiciary will inspect the building to make sure the flows are right and the adequate ventilation under our COVID guidelines. And once they give the go-ahead, hopefully we can return to somewhat normal. I think it's going to be still reduced capacity like it is at Lake Street right now, but hopefully we get the go-ahead for in-person. But the revolution in remote hearings, it's made a huge difference. in terms of access to justice and saving people time and money, so Burlington attorneys or Rutland attorneys don't have to drive all the way up and charge their clients for that. So I think it's going to be a consistent use of remote hearings or partial and remote hearings, but it'll be nice for some people that don't have the technology to be able to get back in the courtroom and deal with that.
Are there some negatives about that? Do you lose something with remote hearings, or?
I think in the hearing on the merits where there's evidence being presented, it makes it a little bit difficult. We've now gone to not allowing phone participation. We're requiring people to be either in person or WebEx as we transition from the COVID. We were really flexible during the COVID lockdown to make sure everybody had access. But right now, since we're transitioning, once we have access to the courtroom again, we're going to have people actually face to face. That makes a difference because then you can actually see people and evaluate the evidence. But other than that, I think it's been pretty seamless with the remote hearings, and I know a lot of people really enjoy not having to make the trip and charge their clients for that. So,
Bob, does that sound like a good thing that remote hearings have come on so much?
I've participated in many remote hearings through the Odyssey system that we have, and in the remote WebEx hearings, and it does have a lot of advantages in certain ways because, as Vaughn said, attorneys, the judges usually start these hearings right on time, not always, but usually. And evidence and all the pleadings are introduced electronically. So it has certain advantages. It has certain disadvantages too, because it perhaps is always better to see the defendant or the plaintiff or all the other parties involved in person. But it has certain advantages. It's obviously here to stay. I like the idea that the court is now moving in, the courts in general are moving into that the telephone call-ins, which have been quite prevalent, where you just have somebody calling in and you don't actually see their face, is being phased out. So that's probably a good thing. And it's a good thing that the possibility of in-person hearings is coming in. But there's many aspects to the WebEx remote hearings that is here to stay, and I think that's a good thing. I think the judges like it, the attorneys like it, and to a large extent, the litigants like it as well. So it's probably here to stay. And I know it's here to stay.
Yeah, it sounds like it. With your private practice, roughly how much of your work is probate related?
In the past, it's been very extensive. In the last couple of years, it hasn't been that extensive. I've done some work here in Franklin County. I've done work in Chittenden County through the probate court down there. And so I'm very active and very knowledgeable about the probate courts. And as I said, I'm very aware of all the systems that they have. I'm very aware of the people in the county, and I'm ready to move into that position if the voters so choose, and I'm very hopeful that they will.
Vaughn, not talking about the time issue, do you run into some conflicts of interest with just folks you're dealing with in your private practice who end up in probate court, or is that not much of an issue?
It's not been much of an issue. I had all lawyers deal with conflicts of interest, and judges do too.
And what happens if you have a conflict of interest? Do they ship it out to another county? What happens in that case?
So the first thing is you obviously have to disclose the conflict to all the parties, and I do that immediately as soon as we get a filing and let everybody know that there could be a perception of a conflict and give them an opportunity for a hearing or to object to my overseeing a matter. And if they object to me overseeing a matter, I recuse myself, and then it gets sent to one of the other judges. I think I've had 15 or 20 disclosures that I've issued in the last 3.5 years, and I think I've recused on 3 cases. So most people, there's not an actual conflict, but I don't, I'm very committed to my ethics, and I don't even want the perception of a conflict. So we disclose it and we give them the opportunity, and then if the presiding judge, if they want it, I recuse, and so the presiding judge makes that decision and it gets assigned to another judge. But I've taken probably 6 or 7 recusals from the other judges in Grand Isle County and Chittenden County because they have conflicts too in their practices. So and Chittenden County's got conflicts, and he's been a full-time judge for 4 years, so they never go away. You have your history, and you got to deal with it.
Do you get together with your colleagues, the other probate court judges? Do you folks get together once in a while, talk shop? Or?
We have a weekly call, at least a weekly call, and then a twice monthly call. So we're constantly in touch. We have the Teams chat, which is another innovation. So if somebody's got something coming up, they throw that out to the Teams chat and say, "Okay, can we get on a WebEx and talk about that matter before my hearing?" And very collegial. The bunch of new probate judges that came in 2018 are very ambitious and very experienced, and we really rely on our veteran colleagues, but we really help each other out with anything we need.
I mean, obviously judges are different, but if someone's in probate court in Franklin County or Chittenden County, presumably things will be roughly similar in how the proceedings go, or?
They should be, and we're doing a lot of work in the judiciary to standardize practice and procedures, especially with the changes in the remote hearings and all that. Everybody was kind of winging it at the start of COVID, and now we're trying to make sure that everybody, like the telephone appearances and the WebEx, and making sure if you have a hybrid hearing going on, that we're all going to do it the same. So there's a standard practices committees in the judiciary that are working on all those issues. So I think it was a bit chaos with COVID, which it was for everybody, but we're getting there, I think.
Right.
And we talk about it, say what worked, what didn't work, and how do we do it.
Bob, does it make sense? I don't know other states. Does it make sense this is an elected position, or do you think it'd be better if a probate court judge was appointed?
Well, it's always been elected. State's attorneys are elected.
In
Assistant
Vermont,
judge.
just other states. I assume other states. Some other states, I would assume, is it.
In many states, unless they're like New York, almost all the judges are elected, trial judges and so forth.
I've been seeing
all
ads
the
from
courts.
New York State.
I noticed in Alabama, there's nothing to do with this really, but they're all elected, and they're all usually white folks because that's the way it works down there. But in any event, the probate court judges have always been called the people's judges because they are elected by the people, and the people get to have a say in it. And I'm glad that they have a say in it because they get to evaluate both candidates, in this case both candidates, to see if they're trustworthy, compassionate, how they feel about the people. And I'm doing my best to explain everything to them, and I imagine my opponent is doing the best in his way. And it's the people's court, the people's judge, and I'll be content with whatever they decide. I hope they decide in my favor, but it's the people's court, the people's judge.
Having been elected once, makes sense to elect probate, and that's the way it's always been in Vermont, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a constitutional appointment. It's directed. They'd have to change the Constitution to get it changed, and I do think it brings you closer to the constituents that you're serving. There's no fun in campaigning, but it is necessary, and you have to do it. And this time, of course, I'm governed, and Attorney Farrar is governed by the Judicial Code of Conduct, which governs the elections and participation, and also the Vermont Professional Responsibilities Code.
I was going to ask you about campaigning, so it's talk about maybe you're getting into that, but can you campaign, or you have restrictions, or?
There's both in the dignity of my office and also under the Judicial Code, we're severely restricted on what we can and can't do. Can't participate in party politics, can't endorse other candidates or take positions on that. We're supposed to be truthful in our representations regarding qualifications. And so I take all those seriously, which is why many people haven't seen me as active on the campaign trail this time as last time.
So you're typically not doing a lot of door-to-door. Can you do door-to-door campaigning if you want? I
can advocate on my own behalf. I can do events. I can participate in forums like this. I can do things like that, but it can't really be coordinated or be seen to be endorsing other candidates or participating in party politics.
Right. Bob, talk about campaigning again. Some restrictions. How have you gone about campaigning this time?
I've tried to get my name visible. I've tried to point out to people that I'm a viable candidate for this position, and I take it seriously, and I intend to keep doing it very seriously because this is an important position for myself and for the people of Franklin County, and I intend to do it very, very vigorously also.
When you're campaigning, when you're talking to people, do they know probate court judge? Does it mean much to many of the people you're talking to and trying to get support from?
Some yes and some no, because let's face it, people are interested in the legislators mostly. What are they going to go down to Montpelier and lower my taxes or raise my taxes or get into education matters and things like that? The probate judge for is very important, but it doesn't make, excuse me, policy for the state of Vermont. So sometimes it's vital and it's very informative and interesting to educate people, if you will, on what the probate court judge does. And so I do some of that when people are interested, and we just do as much as we can. There was a forum out in Enosburg not too long ago, last week in fact, and for which all the candidates were there and tried to inform the people of what a probate judge does or what a legislature does. So, you know, it's not the highest of all positions, but it's a very important position.
And as we talked about, of course, the 2 assistant judges, Franklin County voters will elect 2 assistant judges. You've been working with Kelly Goslin. I mean, you deal with those folks. You're in charge of the county courthouse fund, so you sit down with the side judges once in a while to talk budget matters, or not?
Yeah, I mean, the county officers are the probate court judges, the sheriff and the side judges. So county matters should be decided amongst them, and we do have meetings and talk about things, and especially with the county courthouse and how it's going to be operational. Now that we got some HVAC in, it's going to make a big difference. So yeah.
And the HVAC, that's a state requirement. That's something the court had to put in. Is that the case?
It's not a state requirement. It's a state requirement if the county wants the courthouse to be reopened during these COVID times, because we need adequate ventilation so that there's air circulation and not.
So that was kind of a pandemic issue then?
Right, and they've just done it or they're in the process of doing it in Grand Isle and a number of other buildings. They started with the ones that had HVAC to upgrade those systems because that was the easiest, and now they're installing HVAC in a number of different courthouses.
And some other renovations going on as well. Is HVAC the main thing, or there's some other work going on too?
They replaced the chairlift, which was good for our ADA compliance. We needed to do that. Sometimes we had to use the probate courtroom, which is on the first floor for ADA compliance, but we've got the chairlift back, which was essential to reopening also. So, and I think they've got some plans for office renovations and things like that, make it much more functional.
Interesting. Down to a little over 2 minutes. I'll give you each about a minute or so for a closing statement. Bob, make your case. Why would you be the good probate court judge?
I think I'm the proper and best candidate for the job because I've been an attorney for so long. I've had hundreds of cases. I've had hundreds of probate court cases. I've had trial experience. I like working with people. I think people relate to me. People say that I'm very trustworthy and compassionate, so I think that when it comes to being a judge, I have the qualities that are necessary for that particular thing. And I feel that I'm a good candidate for probate court. As I said, the main difference, I think, is that I would be the full-time judge. The people deserve that, and I would not be a part-time judge with, I strongly believe, certain conflicts of time. So that's my feeling, that I would be the proper candidate for this position.
And Vaughn, why do you think you deserve another 4-year term?
Because I've dedicated my practice from when I came back in 2012 all the way through to being the probate judge to the probate practice. It was a significant part of my private practice, far in excess of attorney for ours experience, and dedicated to that probate. I've overseen all those matters, 1,400 matters in the last 3.5 years, managed my private practice with the probate practice. And in 2018, when I said I would dedicate myself to the probate practice, that's what I've done. And it haven't had any problems with interference between my probate practice and my private practice. Probate practice, I've always been available for anything that comes up with the probate practice, and we've handled things in a timely manner. Sometimes people don't like the outcomes, but that's not what we're there for. We're there to be fair and impartial and give people their day in court and make sure that the law is followed, and we do the best job. I think I've done that, and I think I've proven that over the last 3.5 years and in the last 10 years with my practice.
Okay, we'll call it a wrap. Thanks to the 2 candidates, St. Albans attorney Bob Farrar, running as a Republican for probate court judge, and Franklin County Probate Court Judge Vaughn Como from Berkshire, running as a Democrat for a 2nd term. Thank you very much for the time.
Richard.
Appreciate it. And that's going to do it. I'm Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. See you next time.